Carl Reiner is a legend of American comedy, having achieved great success as a comic actor, a director, producer and recording artist. He has won 9 Emmy Awards, 3 as an actor, 3 as a writer and 2 as a producer. He also won a Grammy Award for his 2000-Year-Old Man album, based on his comedy routine with Mel Brooks. Reiner was born in the Bronx, to Bessie, Matthias, and Irving Reiner, a watchmaker. His father was an Austrian Jewish immigrant and his mother was a Romanian Jewish immigrant. At the age of 16, while working as a sewing machine repairman, he attended a dramatic workshop sponsored by the Works Progress Administration. The direction of his life was set. In the 1970s, some sources claimed that Reiner made his movie debut in New Faces of 1937, but that is unlikely as he would have only been 15 years old at the time. Interesting, that movie shares the same plot as his erstwhile partner Mel Brooks's 1968 classic, The Producers, 1967, with a crooked producer planning to fleece his angels by producing a flop and absconding with the money. He didn't appear on screen, silver or small, until he made his TV debut in 1948 in the short-lived TV series, The Fashion Story, 1948. Then became a regular, the following year, on The 54th Street Review, 1949. Another TV series with a brief life. Reiner made his Broadway debut in 1949 in the musical, Inside USA, a hit that ran for 399 performances. His next Broadway show, the 1950 musical review, Alive and Kicking, was a flop, lasting just 43 performances. Max Liebman, the producer, director, writer, composer, had been called in to provide additional material after the show's troubled 6-week out-of-town preview in Boston. It didn't help. The show closed after 6 weeks on Broadway, but an important contact had been made. Liebman was a producer-director on Your Show of Shows, 1950, one of the great TV series, and he hired Reiner to appear on the show in the middle of its first season. Reiner's first gig on the review-like show was interviewing the professor, a character played by Sid Caesar. He became central to the comedy portions of the show and, in 1953, he racked up the first of 6 Emmy nominations for acting. In all, he was nominated for an Emmy Award a total of 13 times. When, in 1954, Your Show of Shows was split up by the network into its constituent parts, Reiner continued on with Sid in Caesar's Hour, 1954. Imogene Coca was given her own show, which lasted 1 season, and Liebman was allowed to produce specials. Your Show or Shows had been a Broadway-style review, featuring skits such as dancing, including a young Bob Fosse, whereas Caesar's Hour was pure comedy. Your Show of Shows had a great cast, another other than Coca. Most of the cast, including Reiner, Howard Morris, and Nanette Fabre, who went on to win an Emmy, moved over to Caesar's Hour. In his 3 seasons on the show, he was nominated 3 more times for a Best Supporting Actor Emmy, winning twice in 1957 and 1958. But it was its stable of comedy writers that was essential to the great success of both Your Show of Shows and Caesar's Hour. In addition to Mel Brooks, the writing staff included Neil Simon, his brother Danny Simon, Larry Gelbart and Mel Tolkien. There are rumors that the young Woody Allen served as the writing staff's typist. Reiner had sat in informally with the writers during Your Show of Shows, but he began writing formally for Caesar's Hour, having learned his craft from all of the other writers. As a self-described uncredited writer without portfolio, he was able to leave writers' meetings at 6 p.m., if he wanted to. This gave him the time to work on a semi-autobiographical novel. Published in 1958, Enter Laughing, 1967, is about a young man in 1930s New York trying to make it in show business. It was transformed into a play and, eventually, adapted into a movie in 1967, and a musical, many years later. In 1959, he created the pilot for a TV series, Man of the House, in which he would play a writer, Rob Petrie, who balanced his family life with the demands of working as a writer for a comedy show headlined by an egotistical comedic genius modeled after Sid Caesar, a benign despot, who lacked social skills, according to Reiner. The series was rooted in his experience on Your Show of Shows and Caesar's Hour. The network didn't pick up the pilot at first, as CBS executives claimed the main character, which was clearly autobiographical on Reiner's part, was too New York, too Jewish and too intellectual. In 1960, Reiner teamed up with Mel Brooks on The Steve Allen Plymouth Show, 1956, and their routine, The 2,000-Year-Old Man, was a huge success. Reiner played the straight man to Brooks in the routine, which was spun off into 5 comedy albums, bringing them a Grammy Award. They also made an animated TV special based on their shtick in 1975. Though CBS turned down Man of the House, with the 2-time Emmy-winning comedian Reiner as the lead, it was still interested in the series. However, they wanted a wasp in the role of Rob Petrie to ensure the broad appeal of the show, and the casting of the protagonist came down to Johnny Carson and Dick Van Dyke. Carson was a game show host of no great note at the time, but Van Dyke was in the smash Broadway musical, Bye Bye Birdie,